Hi, and welcome to Marketplace Masters, the podcast that dives deep into the strategies that drive success on Amazon. I'm your host, Paul Sonneveld, and today we're exploring how to proactively manage net pure profit margin, or Net PPM. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Merchant Spring, the leading analytics platform for Amazon vendors and their agencies. Determining profitability as a vendor can be very challenging, but Merchant Spring's new vendor profitability module simplifies this process. It integrates COGS, rebates, chargebacks, and advertising costs, providing you with a clear view of profitability at both the vendor code and ASIN level, as well as from a sell-in and sell-out perspective. The early release program is now open to a limited number of participants, so head over to merchantspring.io or visit bit.ly/vendor_P&L to register your interest. All right, now back to the topic of Net PPM. I am super thrilled to have a very special guest with me today, Sarah Sweet, who brings an incredible amount of expertise on this specific topic. Let me just introduce her. So Sarah is the founder of Unicorn Orange, an Amazon agency she co-founded with her husband, Ed. Unicorn Orange is uniquely positioned in the Amazon's marketplace, combining Sarah's expertise and experience on the Amazon vendor team, where she managed major accounts like Nestle, with her sales and marketing background at L'Oreal. Ed's ACA qualification, extensive finance and data analysis expertise perfectly complements Sarah's skills, creating a powerful foundation for their agency. Unicorn Orange draws on both Amazon operational know-how and financial insight to deliver outstanding results for their clients. All right, thank you so much for being on today's show, Sarah. We've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Excellent. Well, Net PPM. Let me just say, I think it's Net Pure Profit Margin, right? I think that's how the acronym translates into words. But what is it, right? What is it? I'm hearing a lot about it. What's in it, and how do you? Well, we'll get to the next question. Let's tackle the first one. What is it?
Yeah, sure. So it's exactly as you say. It's your net pure profit margin, and it's a key metric that Amazon will use in the context of Amazon vendors, not the seller or the 3P side, but the vendor side of things. And put really simply, it just measures vendors' bottom line. Amazon will take into account ASP, so your average selling price, cost prices, and any trading terms. And it's just a metric for Amazon to use internally to understand how profitable their vendors are for them on the platform.
Perfect. So average selling price, obviously, what Amazon sells it to, cost price, trading terms. Let me just throw a few more things at you, and you can say, like, yeah, on advertising costs, in or out?
Out.
Out. All right. Let's subscribe and save funding, in or out?
Depends if that's on your terms. So the calculation is just your average selling price minus your cost price plus terms. So it depends. Then minus your sales discount. So it depends. If you have, most probably will have S&S as part of it, but it varies.
Excellent. Okay, fantastic. Now, why is Net PPM even important, right? Why does it matter? I mean, this is Amazon's profit margin. Like, shouldn't we be, I just did a plug for our own vendor profitability analysis, right? We are concerned about that. Why care about the profit that Amazon is making on your vendor account?
Again, put really simply, it's basically what vendor managers are KPI'd and targeted against. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with Amazon, you have your main point of contact, a category manager, which is referred to as a vendor manager. Their job is essentially to manage the P&L of a category on Amazon. They'll have profitability metrics that they need to reach internally. And Net PPM is the main way of how they will measure their profitability and how they are stacking up against their target. They'll look, again, if a product's not looking at generating enough Net PPM, they'll look at how it is relative to your sales. So the only slight caveat with this is if you are a mega brand and you have products that are very high volume, in terms of sort of sales velocity, there's potentially a little bit more leeway because they'll know that they want that selection on Amazon. So part of the flywheel selection is a key part to the Amazon framework and strategy they have in place. But essentially it's to help, from Amazon's perspective, it's maintaining a profitable product assortment as part of their business model, to ensure that Amazon actually makes money, because obviously they're buying the products from the vendors. So if there's no margin for them, then they're just loss making themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So now what, I mean, I always get the question around benchmarks, right? Or let me put it more simply, is surely you cannot expect someone like as a vendor in, say, the electronics category to have the same net, same net PPM requirements as someone in the apparel industry, right? I'm probably picking two extremes in terms of category margins. So how does that play out in reality when you're talking to an Amazon vendor manager?
So like benchmarking is a real frustration, because Amazon aren't very transparent about it, and they won't publicly disclose any category benchmarks. The way to find out is to have a conversation with your vendor manager and ask them specifically, depending on the size of you as a vendor. For smaller ones, you'll probably speak to your VM once a year around the time of trade term negotiations. It's at that point that they'll disclose it. If you have an AVS or you work a bit closer with Amazon, then you should get more visibility on it. But as a very rough benchmark, sort of based on some industry analysis, hardline net PPM is normally about 40 to 45%. Soft lines is around the 30 to 37%, and consumables will be from sort of 27 to 35. Those are really rough benchmarks, and as I say, within each of those divisions you then have different subcategories, so it will vary a lot, and it's really hard to keep an eye on it, and know where you stand. And as I say, often Amazon won't really disclose it until it's trade negotiation times, by which case you'll have had a year potentially being below their margin. But the other thing to mention is it will change all the time depending on Amazon's profitability targets and margins that they'll have set internally for them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I imagine that depending on like the agenda and the flavor of, I was going to say flavor of the month, or probably more of the year in terms of what they're going for in terms of the AVM. I'm assuming there are certain years there where everyone's a challenge of, hey, we want to grow our net PPM by 150 basis points.
Yeah.
So, that's the top line target. And how does that work down? How do we renegotiate with every single vendor to try and get that increase, right? That margin expansion. Can I just ask a clarifying question? Does Amazon look at this at a category level or at a vendor level? So, for example, what happens if you're a vendor? Like a classic example would be, thinking my good old days in health and beauty. You may have a vendor, right? Someone like P&G, right? They're doing nappies or diapers, depending on where you live. But they might also do baby wipes, right? Baby wipes, different category within the baby space, high margin. Diapers, not so much, or at least here in Australia. Like, does Amazon look at it? Hey, you're trading across two different categories, and therefore you need to, really address those margins and the net PPM requirements separately, or is it sort of a blended piece across your entire vendor account?
So when I was at Amazon, so that was about 5 years ago now, so it might have changed slightly. I was actually in the consumables division myself. They would look at it would be two separate negotiations. So in the example you said, it might be health and beauty, or across with PCA, for example. If there's a large vendor like you mentioned, P&G or Unilever, it will be two separate negotiations. But one thing to kind of touch on is Amazon will look at, you mentioned nappies specifically as a product. So I think the second part of your question is, how do they look at it in terms of overall vendor and then product level? What they'll consider is the velocity of a product, so the sales velocity. So something like nappies or water wipes, as the baby wipes, is a huge seller on Amazon. They will know that is a huge product that drives a large proportion of their sales. So Amazon internally have something called a CP floor, which is your contribution profit floor, and they will look at that on a product by product level. And they will consider taking sort of a lower cap if this product is in high demand, like water wipes or nappies. So there is a little bit of looking at it at a vendor level, but then also they will drill down to a product level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Thanks for that. All right. Well, let's get into the most important aspect here, which is actually, let's assume it's probably a safe bet. Let's assume that most vendors will encounter the challenge from Amazon to increase their net PPM. I guess the other option is radio silence from Amazon on the topic, which means you're probably in a healthy state. I doubt Amazon ever asks for you to reduce it. So let's assume you're tasked with lifting your net PPM across your entire vendor account. And maybe even you've got a couple of products, and we did a separate podcast on this, that are at risk of not realizing a profit, right? Or crap. So take us through, what are the easy levers? I know there's probably some harder ones, and we'll get into that. But in terms of what are the sort of the basic actions a vendor can take to lift the net PPM and satisfy Amazon's requirements?
So the one that Amazon loves to tell their vendors is to decrease your cost prices. Their argument will be that you're the vendor, you have the control over your products. So you should be able to negotiate lower cost price with your manufacturer, with your shipping, your logistics provider, marketing costs. And by doing so, you can then offer Amazon, pass these savings on to Amazon. They'll also talk about, optimizing your logistics, improving your inventory management to reduce your storage fees. That's a lot of what Amazon loves to tell you. And as I say, yeah, you're the product owner, so it's up to you to decrease your prices. Another one that they love to say is like optimizing your pricing. So consider your dynamic pricing strategy to respond to market changes and try and keep up with competitors. Again, this is a bit easier said than done. I understand that there's economic factors. Well, Ukraine, for example, we have a client who was hugely affected by the breakout of it was a wheat supply coming from Russia, and you often just don't have that control. But those are two that Amazon love. They also like to talk about expanding your product line, so introducing complementary products, or bundling is a very popular option that they'll like to talk about to sort of increase that AOV, which will help with overall profitability. But again, working firsthand with a number of clients, I know they're not always possible, and it takes time to introduce a new product. Similarly, Amazon exclusives is one that they love to talk about. It will help because it will negate that price matching element, which is often the driver of a lower net PPM, because unfortunately Amazon does price match. But when you're launching exclusives, Amazon would argue, that it will be something completely unique, and you can set the price of what you need it to be. Again, the issue with this is that when you're creating an exclusive, it still needs to be very competitive in terms of price. So you can't just duplicate the same product and then increase the price because no one will buy it. So you need to have that volume to attract customers. And there's a lot that goes into exclusives as well. Amazon has a lot of guardrails in terms of what actually defines an exclusive. So those are the sort of bog standard ones that Amazon likes to tell you, but I know they're easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of exclusives, obviously, you are driving a lot more complexity in terms of your own product portfolio and even your supply chain. Depending on, is it just is it a sticker on the packaging, or is it an entirely new product? There's definitely incremental cost there too. But you do touch on the topic of as a vendor, can I optimize my portfolio, or can I play around with it, right? So, for example, and I know this is a bit different in the UK, say, than we find in North America. But let's say I've got one of my top sellers. There's just too much competition in the market there, and I can't sort of rein in my channel distribution strategy. So it's very competitive. Amazon is price matching. The price is going down. The net PPM is being compressed. One option I might say as a vendor, look, I'll just stop supplying that product. via the vendor program.
Mm-hmm.
How is that a realistic option in the eyes of the retail team? How easy is that, or is that purely theoretical? Because hey, why would Amazon want to let go of a top seller, and maintain control of it from a retail point of view? What have you encountered when you sort of get into those sorts of conversations?
Do you mean, sorry, just to confirm, do you mean in terms of from the vendor's perspective, is it realistic, or from Amazon's perspective?
Well, will Amazon okay the move? If I'm saying, well, look, I've got one product that is really makes no money. It's a top seller, but it's diluting my whole category. I'm just going to stop supplying it to Amazon. I mean, you can play around with your overall profitability just by removing like really low profitability products. What's Amazon's view on those sorts of tactics? How do they typically respond?
Yes, so it depends. So I've worked with quite a large range of vendors, some doing multi-million major household names that you would know, and then some sort of smaller ones. And ultimately that depends on where you stand in your relationship with Amazon. So with the larger vendors, that won't go down too well, because often it's the best sellers. Often, this is a broad sweeping statement, but often it's the best sellers that deliver the most revenue, because they're well priced. And often that means that they will deliver the worst net PPM. So if you're saying to Amazon that I'm going to remove these from your catalog, that's something that Amazon won't be too keen on, because it will be a huge hole that you'll be creating in terms of their turnover. So with smaller vendors, on the other hand, though, you don't really need to notify them. You can just mark your product as permanently out of stock on Vendor Central, and Amazon would just stop placing POs. So so ultimately depends on the relationship and where you stand. And I think with the piece on the bigger vendor side of things, you also need to consider your long-term relationship and how you want to work with Amazon. And you have to tread very carefully on that line, because if you're looking to cut your revenue in half because you're removing your top sellers, that won't go down too well. So I suppose in a sort of long-winded way, it depends on your relationship and what your objective is really with Amazon as a channel.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's get into some of the maybe less obvious levers, right? So we talk about obviously lowering your cost price, some of the basic things that Amazon, the easy ones that kind of seem to be easy for Amazon to ask, and but quite difficult for a vendor to actually act on. What are some of the more intricate examples or strategies that you've employed over the years to lift Net PPM?
Yeah, so you kind of touched on one a little bit there, which is talking about catalog diversification. But I don't mean this in the sense of just cutting your range. I mean looking at your portfolio that you have with Amazon, and focusing on those ASINs that have a much higher net PPM, and looking at how you can redirect traffic and sales towards those high net PPM ASINs, and changing the balance of how your catalog set up. This was a mega strategy for us that we've done with a number of our clients, and we actually boosted net PPM by 6% to 27% over the course of 20 months, by just really drilling down, say, understanding those high net PPM products and redirecting sales there. And as I say, the results were phenomenal that we had. So catalog diversification is a really interesting one, and as I say, you don't have to be as brutal as cutting, like you mentioned, but you can look at how you change that portfolio that you have. It's a really good way to help boost that net PPM.
And can I just ask, obviously the levers that come to mind is advertising, right? Trying to, put more advertising on those products. But what are the specific levers that are helpful in terms of shifting that demand or amplifying the demand on those high net PPM products?
So there's a number. Ads is the obvious one, but unfortunately, clients will then argue, although Amazon doesn't take into account advertising costs, our clients will. So they'll say, well, that's reducing my margin if you're just boosting ads in. So that's an obvious one. It can help, but another way is to look at your pricing is a really key way. Understanding your pricing strategy at a product level. And again, you can get super granular. So with a client I have in mind, the ones that have a much higher net PPM at a specific product will often have better cost prices than those that have a lower net PPM. And so what that meant was we had more freedom to sort of run deals at a more competitive price than perhaps the best sellers that had the lower net PPM. So having a really solid deal strategy in place for those ones is important. And then not just having a good deal strategy, but making sure you're implementing the right deal. So for us at Top Deals with Amazon, every time you just get the best visibility that you can rather than a lightning deal or a best deal. So deals is a great way. We also did a lot of work in terms of reviews. To make sure that they sort of matched, ideally you want a minimum of 100 triple digits if you can on Amazon. So reviews is really important. And then you can do some quite clever strategies with targeting. Although you don't want to go overboard on the ads, you could target, the higher velocity seller products with these ASINs you're trying to list on your detail page. So it's kind of defensive targeting, but with an agenda to go towards other products. And then on that, you can do sort of more seasonal brand store activations as well that might suit a particular product to help customers discover them. And then another really cool tool that we like to use a lot is the A+ Premium. On Vendor, it's very expensive, and Amazon will charge you extra for this, but you can get it for free via seller. So if you activate a seller account, you can open up the A+ Premium, which can be a really, really powerful tool, and you can increase your conversion between 8 to 10%. And again, done properly. That is, so having nice videos, good graphics, but making sure you're showing off that product that you want to push in the best way. So there's a number of levers you can do, and it's how you focus budgets and how you look at the catalog. Hopefully those few little tips will be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great insight. So in terms of the A+ Premium and using that through seller as well, much more affordable than doing it via vendor. So it's not, for me, the takeaway is there's some other levers here. It's not just advertising, right? Which is great. So thank you so much for sharing those. Great. So that's kind of, playing around with the portfolio and trying to shift demand towards higher net PPM products.
Mm-hmm.
What else has worked for you in the past?
So really key one that we've looked at is your retail calendar alignment. So a lot of our clients will be in sort of major retailers, and the headache that we've had is the price matching and the funding requests coming through from Amazon. And obviously that can result in orders being blocked, delisting, that everything that you don't want to have. This has been a major project for us again. It takes a year or so, but by aligning your pricing with retailers, you can really help with that price matching piece. I know it's very difficult. As I say, it's not a quick fix, and it's definitely a long-term strategy, but by having everyone together at the same price, you will then know when price matching will occur. And it can really help with that price matching. And it's a major project that we've done. And yeah, as a side tip on this, the sort of retailer, again, we've had a larger piece looking at activations with retailers and how money is best spent with our clients in the likes of Sainsbury's, and we've started doing some sort of ads online for Sainsbury's and with the Waitrose retailers, and the return that we see on that, the ads via Citrus versus like gondola end activations, for example, is mega. So looking at that overall picture in terms of retailer and thinking of it as a bit more of an overall rather than just Amazon is really important, as well as that alignment. So things are happening sort of simultaneously.
So can I just summarize? I mean, I'm sort of putting my old retail hat back on here. So I used to call this like the promotional calendar, right? So rather than, I mean, this happens in Australia, right? We're still very much like a high-low market as opposed to EDLP. So it's like, this week it's, I'm using UK retailers here, but it's these 2 weeks it's Tesco's turn, and now it's Waitrose
Yeah.
turn, and now it's M&S's turn, and Amazon's matching like all the time, so they are like forever on promo,
Yeah.
right? So what you're saying here is, hey, guys, we're going to do a half price across the market, and try and line up that activation across retailers at the same time, so everyone takes the discount at the same time. Go with that.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about, right?
Exactly. As I say, this was a major project. It's taken nearly 2 years to get into play with clients, because it's very difficult because you're managing a lot of retailers. But what the impact on Amazon means is when price matching is happening. And so it's much easier to manage. And then you can work out, again, sort of the uplift that you might see from that discounted side of things. And then potentially budget wise, you can maybe allocate a little bit more from the incremental uplift that you would see. But yeah, as I say, it's not a quick fix, and it's a big strategy. And as I say, it's also interesting to explore different activation options within Sainsbury's, Waitrose, etc., to see where you get your best return, and then thinking about that pot as an overall and how to best push promotions. But yeah, that was a big project that's been going on for a couple of years, but it's worked really well for us in terms of the net PPM results that we've seen on Amazon.
That is great to hear. I know what's involved in doing that, and that's a lot of work to pull that off. But once it's there, it's good. So that is great. Excellent. So so we talked about the portfolio piece. We talked about kind of aligning of promotions. Any final tricks up your sleeve, Sarah?
The final one that we haven't actually mentioned, which is probably quite important to this, is just your terms negotiation. So with this, it's really important. It's another topic in itself, but it's really important to think about your business and what's important to you and how you can leverage the tools available. So I mentioned A+ premium, excuse me. If you wanted to save yourself the headache of having a seller account or vendor account, you can ask for that as part of your terms. If you're a brand that launches new products on a regular basis, again, there are workarounds on opening a seller account, but you might prefer to have Vine as credits that you might want to use. So when you're going through your terms, it's really thinking about, okay, Amazon's asking me for a 5% increase on what I have, but what can you actually leverage from Amazon to benefit you? So a really popular one with a lot of our clients is Pix, which is a saving on your logistics, in that you can send them just to a fewer amount of warehouses rather than POs being spread across a massive amount. So what you can do is obviously work out the incremental terms amount that Amazon's asking for and how that offsets versus the savings that you might make with tools like Pix or Vine or whatever it might be. So I'd say that's the other key one, is just thinking really, really carefully about how, if you want to work with Amazon, how you can leverage them when it does come to that terms negotiation.
Yeah, that makes sense. If there are some things that you can obtain and put to your side of the ledger, that will benefit you for the year ahead. Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Well, we're almost out of time, Sarah, but I do have a couple of questions that have just come in. I think particularly our discussion around the alignment of calendars has sparked quite a few questions. So before we wrap up, I'd love to just put you on the spot and run a few past you. So
Sure.
let me have a look here. I am going to go with Kerry's question. Kerry, thank you so much for submitting it. We are doing this live, so if anyone has any other questions, feel free to throw them in. Now's the time. I'll read it out. We already have the alignment calendar in place, but how are you getting around the loyalty card pricing? We found out that since July, Amazon isn't pulling the algorithm when it's on a loyalty card price.
Amazon isn't what? Sorry, the algorithm. Could you repeat that last bit?
It says Amazon isn't pulling the algorithm when it's on a loyalty card price. So I'm assuming it means if there is a specific sort of price in the retail channel based around loyalty cards or as a qualifier, then Amazon doesn't match it. I don't know if I interpreted that correctly. Feel free to drop another comment or another note in the comments, Kerry, if we got that right.
Yeah, sorry. We would have. I'm not sure what you mean. That is the last bit about pulling the algorithm when it's on loyalty card price. If you wouldn't mind confirming that, Carrie, that would be great.
I'm just going to park this question, Carrie. If you could confirm that, that would be great, and we'll get straight back to you. All right. We do also have one here from Kunal. Thank you for your question. If we are aligning with other retail calendars, then is it relevant to invest in Amazon deal events like PD,
Prime Day, Black Friday,
Prime Day, Black
yeah.
Friday? Yep. A lot of acronyms there. You really tested my acronyms. I think I got 2 out of 3, but not the first one.
The short answer is, if you can, then yes. The main reason is because of the visibility that you do get on those Prime Day deals. As I say, though, I'd be really careful about what deal you do. Other results, as I said, sort of briefly touched upon before, of lightning deals versus best deals versus top deals is significant. Top deals are 100% the best option to go with, but they can only be activated via Amazon through the RBS team, which you can get in contact with via your vendor manager. So if your margin will take it, then 100%, because as I say, we had one client that had over 1,000% uplift on Prime Day just when it was. So you can get some significant uplift from it. And if you do activations like emailers, Instagram shoutouts, anything like that, you'll help drive more traffic. So in short, if you can, yes, but I understand that margin can always be a constraint.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to build on that. So we've been looking at the lifetime value for a lot of our clients around Prime Day events and the like. And certainly, if you're in a grocery category or in a frequently purchased category with maybe some consumer regimes or whatever that looks like, actually this can be great events to drive that lifetime value there. But probably slightly off topic here, but yeah, we're seeing some interesting things there. All right, let's get back to Carrie. So her initial question was this one here. So specifically around, we found that since July that Amazon isn't pulled the algorithm when it's only on loyalty cards. So in terms of loyalty cards, she's talking about like Club Card for Tesco or Nectar for I think Sainsbury's. And she's saying, in those circumstances, when it linked to those loyalty cards, the price doesn't reflect back onto Amazon. So I think what she's saying is it's hard to harmonize the prices because Amazon is not matching those deals.
I see. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, it's the formal price matching you mean, Kara, doesn't match loyalty discounts. So with that one, you're saying, how do we then take the club card pricing to match on Amazon? You can manually adjust if you wanted to your pricing when necessary. It's easier to do that in Seller Central. So if you had a dual pricing, sorry, it just popped up again. If you have a dual account, so seller and vendor, it's much easier to adjust pricing manually on Amazon. But if you're still winning the buy box, I don't know why you would necessarily change it if your pricing is not being affected. I suppose you're probably saying that sales would dip because you've got the club card pricing on Amazon. So if you wanted to match them, you could look at, as I say, the best way would be to manually overwrite your pricing so you are matching those club card pricing. One thing I'd say is Amazon's always updating their algorithm, so it's likely that it will probably come soon, although it's not there at the minute. But I'd say manual override at this point would be the best option if you wanted to match those club card prices.
Excellent. Great answer, Sarah. Thank you so much for all of our audience, by the way, for submitting those questions. And apologies we didn't get to all of them. We are unfortunately going to wrap it up here. We are out of time. So firstly, Sarah, I just want to thank you for coming on the show today. I know you're very busy running your agency. You've just moved offices as well. And it's a crazy time of year. So thank you for doing this and giving up your time in Q4. I really feel like you've given us some new insights and some really practical tips on how you can manage Net PPM, beyond the basics that Amazon will ask you for. So really, really appreciate that. Now, For any viewers that are listening live or maybe watching this on demand, if they're keen to get in touch with you, maybe you have a follow-up discussion around Net PPM, or maybe how you at Unicorn Orange can help them. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can feel free to contact me directly. It's just Sarah, Sarah at unicornorange.com. But I am going on maternity leave in December, so you can email my husband and co-founder if you're not quick enough to get back to me, and he's just ed at unicornorange.com.
Perfect. All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. Until next time.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
All right, everyone, that is it for today's episode of Marketplace Masters. Thank you so much for tuning in on this very enlightening episode on how to not just measure, but particularly improve your Net PPM. Now, if you are hungry for more, don't forget to visit our video on demand library for a treasure trove of insights, especially around Amazon vendor topics. Just head to merchantspring.io and find the link to our resources library there. And of course, if you're looking to streamline your Amazon vendor analytics to gain sharper insights, particularly around your Net PPM and how that's trending at your vendor account or product level, make sure to reach out to me, and I'd love to share with you how Merchant Spring can assist. Lastly, I am all ears about what vendor topics you'd like me to cover next. If you have a specific topic or question in mind, please send me a direct message on LinkedIn, and I will do my absolute best to find an expert, the right speaker, and line up a live episode for you. That's it. Thank you so much for listening today. Until next time, take care.